They weren't just moving coke by car or truck. At some point, they started using submarines to transport cocaine. Hey folks, Lyadov here. Today I'll share my Mexico adventure. It was intense, one of our riskiest shoots. We nearly didn't make it back from Guerrero State. So let's revisit that wild time. Here we go.
Are you subscribed to our channel? Not yet? The sad thing is that Anton can't go on his next adventure until you do. So pretty please, subscribe now. That's right. Go ahead, click subscribe. Well done and thank you. We can continue now.
Before this, I only knew about Mexico from Narcos, an incredible series, you must watch it. But it's about the past drug war, not what's happening in Mexico today. It's not because the drug war ended, no. You know why? Because those who report on today's drug war in Mexico, journalists who link cartels and government, are simply shot. To be honest, I didn't fully grasp the danger level at that time. One evening, I met some Russian guys there. They simply asked, "Where are you headed?" I said, "I'm going to Guerrero State tomorrow." They were like, "You're going to Guerrero State? Do you know they've recently killed a bunch of people there? It's the most brutal part of the drug war right now." Honestly, at that moment, I had no idea about any of this, I swear. So I started Googling, when else to Google, but the night before heading to Guerrero State, I Googled and was shocked by the number of journalists who were just gunned down. Honestly, it's because people involved with illegal drugs are the big shots there. They're so powerful that when El Chapo's son, the top drug lord, was caught, all hell broke loose in Sinaloa. It's Mexico's main cartel today. They returned him to authorities, and the president actually said it was the right move to keep the peace.
I support this decision because the situation became very difficult and many people were put in danger.
Just so you know, they really feel like they're running the show there.
Here are the instructions that everyone needs to follow when entering the city. Firstly, you must lower your car's windows to let the cartel see you and let them know that you have good intentions. Stranger or not, you still have to do it. Otherwise, if your windows are up, God forbid tinted, the aggression towards you is guaranteed.
Here's the main rule when entering cities with drug gangs. Typically, there are several groups in each city, each controlling a few blocks. It's not centralized like in GTA San Andreas, where you'd shoot at gang members and they'd swarm you. No, it's much more complex here. One street might belong to one cartel, the next to another, and even part of a street could belong to a third cartel, and so on. So the weirder and less understandable you appear when entering these cities, the more likely people will want to talk to you or even confront you. Especially if you're a man, a foreigner who's obviously arrived with money. Remember, the main goal of these cartels is essentially to take money and do business. There are actually areas where the police don't go by agreement, not due to fear or laziness. Breaking this rule would start serious trouble.
The real map of Mexico looks nothing like what Google Maps shows us. The entire country is divided among major cartels that supply the US with illegal goods.
When we released this episode on the English channel and the American YouTube moderators watched it, we were shocked by the complaints we got about Russian YouTube. They didn't seem to care about what we showed. The fact that we presented the real situation at the border between Mexico and the US really bothered YouTube. They scrutinized every detail of the map.
I'm almost at the border between Mexico and the USA now, within a stone's throw of the US. The man walking in front of me belongs to the so-called coyotes. You pay them to smuggle you across the border.
This is what the Mexico-US border looks like. It's the place where tons of videos show people trying to cross. We filmed this guy, actually a smuggler, who even agreed to show his face and tell it like it is. Who's threatening him? No one. The only ones who could catch him are American cops, but they're not in Mexico. Mexican police aren't too keen on nabbing him because they benefit from fewer people at the border. So they're fine with it. He's just talking nonsense.
Has it ever happened that you were caught? Yeah. How? It was around the line, because we used to cross the border differently. People were given fake papers, but the migration officers found out that I was with them. They spotted fake papers and told me that I was their guide. Eventually I got 1 year in prison. So you spent a year in prison? Yeah. Where? Here in San Diego.
Before 22, it was pretty unstable there, mainly due to cartel influence zones. The border was split by km. Each cartel had its own road and checkpoint. Well, basically, if you stumble into the wrong place, they'll shake you down for sure. But they've got this process set up where smugglers buy a service package, so to speak, which includes clearance from cartels. They actually hand out cartel passes to lookouts, sharing profits, so that's how they operate there.
Well, what shocked me the most was the US-Mexico border near Tijuana. How people live there is just mind-blowing, man.
There is some sort of canal here, like a huge gutter for the river. In the rainy season, the water reaches the top. When there are no rains, the canal is dry, so the migrants live here. They adjust literally any spot to settle. It can be under a random pole or a piece of concrete sticking out of the wall. They just throw some rugs on the ground, or at times nothing at all, and live here. Looks absolutely crazy.
Actually, when I first approached them, they just saw my camera and started yelling, "Get out of here," over and over. I was like, what? You came to us, you piece of crap? What was I thinking? Damn, how can I film this? I need to shoot something. I thought I'd go early morning when they're not all wasted yet. It worked. Honestly, it was just unbelievable footage. These people live in sewers and water tunnels. It's mind-blowing.
Fentanyl, coke, heroin, and illegal guns are all supplied by Mexican gangs known here as cartels. Mexico's got about 10 top drug lords.
If you're a tourist heading to Cancun, Mexico, you don't need to know this, but if you're going to Mexico to explore off the beaten path and see places that are truly fascinating, then you really need to understand the cartel landscape. The country isn't just divided into states. Mexico is the United States of Mexico, but it's also split into zones controlled by major drug cartels.
The Tijuana cartel on the coast, with about 1,000 fighters. Right on the US-Mexico border sits the Juarez cartel. They're Mexico's most brutal, burning people in cars and hanging them on poles just because they could.
Speaking of the Juarez cartel, it's brilliantly portrayed in the Narcos series. If you watch it, you'll see it's one of Mexico's biggest cartels even today. Basically, the strongest cartels are those controlling the US-Mexico border. Why? It's simple. The US is the world's largest market, so there's the highest concentration of wealthy consumers. It's not that they all love drugs. Drug use happens everywhere, but it's logistically easy to move from Mexico to the US because of the huge border. Close one route, open another. It's a constant cycle. The system is straightforward. There's South America, with many countries producing illegal drugs, mainly cocaine, but not just that. And why there specifically? because the deeper into the jungle and South America you go, the easier it is to set up plantations and labs and so on. The main countries involved are Colombia, with production also in Bolivia, Venezuela, and many other South American nations. As fate would have it, there was this larger-than-life figure named Pablo Escobar. He lived in Colombia, specifically in Medellin. It's from him that all the major cartels actually originated. He was truly the first, the craziest, the toughest, let's say the most extraordinary, a real drug lord. What he did was just unbelievable. Meanwhile, in Medellin, his hometown, some still love him. The official government doesn't support his museums there. They exist but are often closed in Medellin. Why? Because Pablo Escobar built a massive cocaine production and distribution network to the US. They operated on an unbelievable scale. To give you an idea, their revenue exceeded that of the largest American multinational corporations. Seriously. They smuggled coke in cars, hid it in wheels, under linings, in stomachs, anywhere, even between butt cheeks. Then they started using submarines. No joke. And these submarines are still found occasionally. It's just an incredible scale. But why did they manage to pull this off? Because at that time, there weren't really any obstacles. The police didn't know how to track this stuff, and the special services weren't even operational yet, for instance. You know, there's this concept called billing. It's when, for example, special services use billing to pinpoint where a call came from in the city. Like they can tell a person called from a specific area. Basically, your phone connects to a tower, and these services check which towers your phone linked to during the call. This way, they can figure out where you're calling from. So this system was invented to catch Pablo Escobar. This guy was absolutely incredible. The police had to learn everything from scratch just to catch him. While they were learning, he bought everything, gave out endless money, entered politics, and almost became Colombia's president. But at some point, they started to seriously crack down on him, and he fought back even harder. He thought it was okay to blow up a plane just because there was someone he disliked on board, and besides that person, innocent people died in the explosion too. For him, it was normal to blow up a high-rise in Colombia, specifically in Bogota, the capital city. If you watch Narcos, it's pretty romanticized, plus it stars an incredibly charming actor. When you watch, you just fall in love with the character, and you kind of psychologically forgive him, even though he was an absolutely brutal, creepy, cruel person. He was a guy with an unbelievable level of narcissism. He didn't just want to be rich, he wanted to be a national hero. And for some, he became exactly that. People backed him because he gave out cash on the streets and won folks over with populist talk like, "The government's lying to you, you're poor, so come join us, we'll help you out." It's the easiest way to sway those who lack critical thinking. When the cops were after him, his medallion was full of, let's say, infiltrators. They had a whole network, a security net. What kind of network was it? Basically, these were people who watched for any police heading towards Pablo Escobar's houses. They'd quickly relay the info from one to another, to a third, to a fourth. Some had radios, others had different gear. They'd instantly know if a raid was coming their way. It was tough to catch him, but eventually law enforcement gradually caught his people, shot them. He was left with just one bodyguard, as I recall. In the end, it all came down to him simply running across Medellin's rooftops, shooting back. That's when police hit him. But there's this guy, Pablo Escobar's son, who still lives in Colombia, you know. I know people who know him, so I'm certain that Pablo Escobar's son still doesn't buy that the police shot Pablo. He truly believes the story that Pablo, at some point when he realized it was over and he had nowhere to run, shot himself in the head. But I've read a lot of research on this topic, and everything generally points to the fact that he was indeed shot. So after Pablo Escobar's story ended, it became a global detective thriller that everyone was really following. Colombia, as you know, is a drug production hub. But it's far from the US, with Mexico in between. In Mexico, let's say, drug production is less viable for various reasons.
Guys, if you like my video and if you like what we're doing, I would really appreciate if you support us on Patreon, on Pioneer or on PayPal, and we try to make even more great films from new dangerous places for you. Thank you. All the links are in the description. Please donate.
So Mexican cartels got rich by handling logistics for Colombian cartels, shipping their goods to the US. Logically, the biggest cartels should control Mexico's border. It's huge, right? The border's key for smuggling to that rich market. But historically, the top cartels aren't just those on the border. It all comes down to individuals. And the main player in the Mexican drug war was Felix Gallardo. This guy, he's a real genius. He managed to unite Mexico's scattered gangs into one massive organization, and he structured it just like big multinational corporations. One division handled transport, another was responsible for delivery, a third for cross-border operations, and so on and so forth. Some were specifically enforcers. He had many foot soldiers and built a system that's still partly functioning today. At some point, Felix Goyliard was caught, thrown in jail, and then a new gang war broke out, which in one way or another continues to this day, though it's been over 15 years, maybe even more than 20 since then. How do ordinary Mexicans view this conflict? They see it as a fight over specific towns and cities. There are whole areas where gangs set their own rules and police don't enter. We headed to one of these zones.
Конечно, мы едем туда не наобум.
This, of course, is not just a random trip for me, and I have people expecting me on the other side. Still, even this doesn't really guarantee that everything will go to plan. And although these guys know that I am a foreigner, and they are supposedly meant to be my friends, who knows what will happen and how things will turn out. To start with, I hope they show up, and they will navigate us to the roads where people don't get shot.
Here's a specific example of a city where a group controls different zones. Besides selling their, let's say, goods, they're also into racketeering. They approach businessmen and say, "Hey dude, you gotta pay us this much today and this much next month." I actually filmed a trader who told me about this, just an ordinary merchant.
These protection fees start at $20 and go up to $2,500 every 2 weeks. Their collection methods include threats, torture, and even murder. They may display victims as a warning to other businesses about non-payment.
The neighborhood's called Tepita, just a 10-minute walk from downtown. You pass the Norte Zone sign and the quiet, empty streets where folks wear masks and behave, because cops are everywhere, suddenly transform into a massive bazaar with its own rules, or rather, its own way of life.
It's an incredible place. I highly recommend going there. If you do go, don't interact with the police. Just act like a tourist. You'll be fine as long as you don't start filming or asking questions. I mean, that's exactly what we went there to do, but you shouldn't. Right at the market entrance, I nearly got my face smashed in. I filmed a guy lighting up a joint. He almost caught us, but we managed to smooth things over.
Local vendors see me and wave like, "Buddy, better not film here."
I remember those looks, man. They were stunned by our audacity. We'd roll up and start filming them and they'd be like, "What the hell?"
We are now entering the zone where no cameras are allowed. They told me I can't even film on my small camera, and it's critical that no one sees any of my equipment, because it's an area where no strangers are allowed, especially with cameras. See you in a bit.
The deeper you go, the riskier it gets to take out your camera, because there are restricted areas where tourists and people don't go, especially with cameras. They might just confiscate everything you have or even rob you. If you're really brazen, they might even shoot you.
It's all happening so weirdly. Our guide's talking to some vendor through a grate. Suddenly, this guy with a bag appears out of nowhere and hands him a phone. Who are these people? How did they find us? What's going on here?
I really wanted to talk to a real cartel member. We'd planned this for weeks, waiting for approval and all that. This guy was a huge help, he really was. He set up a meeting for us with a fascinating character, an actual active cartel member. Turns out this man died shortly after our episode aired. Not because he helped us though. He actually died from COVID, but that's just how it happened, yeah.
It's very hard to film anything here because the cartel wants to control every documentary and news report. You have to ask for their permission first. Ask the cartel. Yes, and it's quite an impossible thing to do.
The setup for this meeting was hilarious as we'd been waiting for over a week. The kicker, we couldn't call the guy we were meeting directly, this drug baron. Instead, someone shows up, calls him, and hands the phone to our escort to chat with him about something. They met us at one spot and now they're taking us to an even more secretive location. They're leading us 1, 2, 3. He's like, that's it, put the camera away now. I'm still filming with a small camera. He says, damn it, put that away, put it away. He's reaching for my hands. I'm like, no, I'll put it away. So at some point, the cops actually show up. I remember clearly. This person rides by on a moped and I'm thinking, what's going on? I'm like, do these cops really not know what's happening here? Listen, if the police have been working there for years, that's crazy. That's how they answered my question.
If you show police that it is the place where the drugs are sold, then cartel will find and kill you. Thing is, police knows all the drug spots anyways, but they do nothing because they get paid. Of course, if someone comes to them and points out a specific location, they will have to investigate. But at the same time, they will let the gangs know that there is a snitch inside.
It's funny, this guy was actually born right here in Tepito in one of these shops. They didn't take him to a hospital, he was born right here. It's wild. These guys are intense, colorful characters. It's like Narcos in real life. Honestly, when I was sitting there with him, I wasn't scared at all. I swear it wasn't frightening at all. I don't know why, but we had an agreement, and I felt these people would honor it. Who knows if that's true, but I wasn't scared at all. At some point, I thought, damn, I'll ask him something really messed up. So I said, can you really order a hit here? And he told me yes.
What if you want someone to get killed? Is that something that can be arranged?
If you pay well.
But things got real crazy when we left the capital and headed straight to this state, Guerrero. The worst part? No cell service, and my Moscow contacts had no clue what was going on with me. They were totally in the dark about my situation. By the way, on our way there, I stumbled upon this insane market where you could try all sorts of larvae. It was wild. People still come up to me sometimes, vividly recalling the moment I ate that bug. I remember it well too.
Okay, let's try this.
It's tasty.
I don't think so.
I like it.
This is bad.
Why though?
Actually, it's better now since I swallowed it.
You know, I'm looking at this and thinking, yeah, listen, I already know how it tastes. I could eat it again, sure. Listen, ever since I tried all that wild stuff, I've become way more chill about eating things like, I don't know, worms or larvae or whatever. It's fine, really. I think everyone should go through this. It makes you appreciate normal food so much more.
Despite Mexico's strong economic standing in Latin America, more people are fleeing their homes due to cartel conflicts. This is most prevalent in Guerrero State, the epicenter of the modern drug war. With police failing their duties, self-proclaimed leaders have seized control over vast territories.
Due to major law and order issues in the country, yes, some people started taking matters into their own hands. We met one of these guys. The meeting was pretty sketchy. We agreed to meet in the evening and leave by morning. We enter a cafe and I spot a guy who looks he looks very serious with interesting views, and he acts like, I've heard about how Berezovsky behaved back in Russia in the 90s. He really reminds me of that behavior. When something interests him, he shows up and arranges everything to his advantage. But when he's not interested, he just vanishes. This dude really disappeared at some point, seriously, because we drove to him for like 6 hours one way. And then when we're leaving, he says, "I'll see you off. It's important you get back safely because our area isn't safe, because you might get stopped. They might put a gun to your head and stuff like that." But he says, "That's why I'm dropping you off." And he's like, "Now we're driving for about 10 minutes. He says, "Stop here, please. I'll go to the bathroom, take a shower." He tells us to go on, he'll catch up. We're like, "Damn," he says, "Come on, let's go." And he just bails. Guy's acting really weird. He's escorted by 2 trucks with gunners. I'm walking all night wondering what strange situation this is. Some guy claiming to be a powerful local official drove 6 hours just to meet us. He's taking us there tomorrow. I wonder why he needs this, but there must be some motivation. And I realize he doesn't have any, so I start thinking, hey, maybe we can be useful to him somehow. I mean, he could take foreigners hostage or something. I start Googling him on Mexican YouTube in Spanish and all that, and I realize this guy gave lots of interviews to local papers, some small outlets and such. I think it's just like a mini version of Pablo Escobar who, loves to brag. I recall similar encounters with such people. I met a drug lord in Brazil once. I realized he was exactly the same way because when we arrived at his area, which he controlled in Brazil, he also told us, "Guys, please first film how I built roads in the city, then shoot whatever you want. Action." The psychological type of these people, as I see it, are guys who are power hungry. They know how to organize groups, seize control, and so on. They set things up. But their real motivation is actually, in psychology, it's called narcissism. They enjoy being praised and admired. So I'm thinking, okay, you're like this, and I figure, all right, then let's go, which means I get how to act with someone like that, I gotta show interest, find out what's up with him, how he's doing, what's going on, and that's when I realize, okay, let's do this, and our trip begins.
The deeper we go into the mountains, the more people we see on donkeys instead of cars. There are odd markets selling cobblestones, like a makeshift construction supply store. Many locals here can't read or write Spanish anymore.
People there live at an absolutely primitive level. They farm the land, but they have no electricity. They've got a doctor, but they don't visit him, thinking it'll anger demons who will punish them. So instead, they treat themselves with Coke or hot chocolate. They even give birth strangely.
He refused to go to us. He said he prefers to die home than here. People here listen to their relatives, families. Phonies are a big problem here. Before they go to the actual doctor, they go to around 10 other people they know. Witches, magicians, people who have no education. And only after that they go to the hospital. That's why when they arrive, they're already in a bad condition. What shocked me was this attitude to childbirth. Things they do have nothing in common with what we've studied at university. Everyone knows that a woman has to deliver a child in a calm mood, lying in bed with relaxed legs and so on. But here they deliver babies standing. So a husband is sitting in a chair and his wife is standing above looking at him. They also don't use any drugs. This region, San Luis, has the highest maternal death rate. If you force them as a doctor, they feel interference and resist. Husbands say, "If something happens to my wife, I'll kill you."
At some point, I realized these folks have no connection there. They can't really access the internet, browse, or read stuff online. I understand their lack of connection isn't due to non-functioning towers. The towers are there, but these guys decided, why give free internet? People might grow, get smarter, see different ways of living. Let's not do that. So they sell SIM cards at high prices. You can buy one, but it's too expensive for locals, so nobody does.
The idea that everywhere should have access to info, but beyond that, there needs to be a desire for this information, which is harder to cultivate than just putting up towers across the country. Think about it.